I am Marwan Cameron, and this is The Conduit. All right, y'all, it is Wednesday. It is hump day. It is 12 p.m. straight up in Kitsap County, 50 degrees. Beautiful day. I hope you all are doing well. You know what we do on Wednesdays at 12. It is Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces with Mark Boatwright-Frost. And of course, myself. And we have a special guest today, Nick Gloney. Gonna give him a horn. Special double shout out to him as he helped us celebrate G2's 4th birthday. But today is about resilient ecosystems, ResEco. We're going to get into it today. Gentlemen, how are you doing? Mark, how are you doing today?
I am awesome. Thank you very much. How are you, sir?
Oh, you know, I'm blessed and highly favored as always. Nick, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing very well, as good as I can be, and you're looking good today, Mr. Marwan.
You know, I decided to put on that OC red today, you know.
I like it.
It's getting a little bit warmer, so, you know, I love wearing my colors, as you know, but I got to divert from the purple, you know, every now and then.
Yeah, that Ranger Red, I think, is what they're still calling
Ranger
it.
Red. All right, I like it. I like it. So let's get into it today. We've got a lot going on. We had a really good conversation last week. Interestingly enough, you know, our birthday was on the 8th of February, G2, and Nick came on and we were talking about resiliency and emergency management, and he has a little bit of a background in that. So I did want to jump into that first, Nick, and just have you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your background, and then we'll kind of get into today's conversation.
All right. So I started with OC in 2017. Not knowing exactly what I wanted to do, interested in criminal justice, a little bit of organizational leadership, and then I found that Homeland Security emergency management was the right fit for me. So I have a AA degree in that. I finished in March of 2020. With the degree in Homeland Security Emergency Management and a certification of completion in Homeland Security Emergency Management, and moved on to Pierce College. And I have been with Pierce College since September of 2021. And I have one final quarter, and I will have my bachelor's degree in the same degree path, Homeland Security Emergency Management. So a lot of the harder senior level, junior level coursework. I will also have a certification in tribal organizational government and a healthcare and emergency management. So more of an overarching structure of that. There are a couple other certificates I possess, and we won't get into those, but they fall under the guise of Homeland Security Emergency Management. So I won't bore everyone to death. I also have a professional development series certification through FEMA, which comprises of 70 plus certifications in different areas of incident command structure, national incident management system, disaster preparedness, and this goes from local level, state level, and federal level certifications. So yeah, just kind of a myriad of what someone like myself would be assumed to have under their belt as trainings and certifications.
Well, I think that's fantastic. Shout out to you, one class away from your bachelor degree. Congratulations on all the hard work.
Thank you.
Proud of you for sure.
Thank you.
You know, Nick, how old are you?
So I will be 36 in May. This time in May.
All right. So what's impressive is Nick has been on this journey, you know, since what, about 31, 30, would you say?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. A couple of those quarters were with the program through the state that weren't counted as course credit to break the ice, because, you know, we have young parents, 18-year-old, and then people my age and even older that have been out of school for quite some time, and it helps them get into the routine of what college life is like. And Marwan was one of my first instructors who indulged me in books, what college life would be like, and how it is to communicate with others of all ages. So that was very beneficial for me before starting my actual course credit work.
Well, I appreciate that, and the reason why I asked your age is as Mark and I have these discussions, and we try to encourage people to bring their puzzle piece to the table. The fact that you are as young as you are, and you're so forward thinking, and you have an interest in this field, I think is tremendously important. And if we are going to make change, it is going to be change that is driven a lot from our youth, right? So can't just be the older guys sitting back here and saying, hey, this is what we need to do. It's going to be all of us together, but it's really refreshing to see younger people that are invested and educated and have that information. What's your thoughts? I wanted to get your feedback on that, Mark. What are your thoughts about his pathway and his litany of experience and education that he has already accumulated?
It's interesting because all during his introduction, I was thinking, what a lonely path this is, and how few people actually do the work that needs to be done, as opposed to chasing an MBA and going to sit in the queue and do things that are essentially fairly useless to the benefit of our society, and how few people actually just roll up their sleeves and do the work that needs to be done to make sure that humanity is taken care of. I'm actually feeling heartened and warmed by it.
Yeah, when we had our conversation on the 8th, it was like, yeah, I'm gonna have a conversation with Mark. And one of the things that I told Mark, Nick, is I said, I asked if you would be willing to come on to the show, and you were like, yeah, sure, just let's tell me what we're gonna be talking about. And then you actually followed up. So oftentimes we're trying to find people and bring them to us and say, hey, this is important, bring your piece. And you're like, hey, when do you want to do this? And I'm like, Mark, you got to meet this guy, and here you are. So, yeah, we definitely appreciate you being here today for sure.
And I don't know how
Yeah.
much uh, I don't know how much you were on Marwan last night when Nick and I actually talked for like an hour and a half.
Yeah, no, I missed all of that. Unfortunately, I was trying to do like three things at once. So, but it was
Yeah.
good. I can get out the way, and relationships can be cultivated. That's part of it. So,
You're listening to something, or did you just freeze? I think
no,
I think Marwan
there may be
froze.
some.
A little bit of
Yeah,
latency.
he's got an internet problem.
So, if any one of us just go ahead and pick up the conversation.
Okay,
So we're not going to worry at all. But we do want to get into this conversation. And today we are going to be talking about a social contract. And Mark, I'm going to pass it to you to just kind of give us the scaffolding on what a social contract is and what your thoughts behind it. And then Nick and I will give some of our input and feedback on it.
so one of the things that we have struggled with resilient ecosystems is getting people to gain the perspective about our culture, as our culture, instead of being somebody who plays drums or dances or speaks a different language or paints in a way, that our culture is actually a framework in which we have agreed to live, and that framework is programmable by our humanity, by us as humans. And up to this point, one of the things we uh, hypothesize is that it's been programmed by people who gain from it, which leaves the majority of people not gaining from the social contract. And since it's programmable, we can come together as a people, determine a better social contract, and reprogram the framework to better support our humanity. And so we've been working on this, talking about a framework, but people look at us like, what, you're building a building? What? And what we're really trying to say is that it's a social contract that we have. Law is a social contract to protect and serve. It isn't what it's supposed to be, but it is part of the social contract. Our government is a social contract. It is a contract that we made to support us living together in harmony. And the Constitution was an incredibly good framework for that. What it is today isn't that. So we'd like to go back to we the people. And to start that conversation, and one of the things that Nick and I started talking about last night, and I think that we all should talk about today, is how preparedness and emergencies of things that are happening, like climate change, the pending Cascadia Rising, a potential eruption of the Seattle Fault, which would devastate Bremerton, Mount Rainier, any of these things could be absolutely devastating, and all of them are likely to happen at some point in time. Where are we, and how can we best assist people? And are our systems that are in place enough to help us survive and recover?
Okay.
And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this. I think that it's just a discussion about where we think we need to be. As you know, my hypothesis is we need to start with the neighborhoods and get people together talking to each other and sharing skills and sand tabling out what ifs and using that as a basis to build relationships without the neighborhood. And I think it should all start with breaking bread. That's what I've been talking about for a very long time. So what I'd like to hear are other thoughts, because as I've said many times, I am certainly not the expert, and I certainly don't know it all. All I know is how to put a framework together, and it's you that is going to be bringing the pieces, whoever
Sure.
you
I'll
are.
I'll go second, and then Nick, you can follow after me here. And I've got a story that just happened this morning, actually. And so when we think about a social contract, this is something that I've been discussing at the end of last year of creating a social contract in my community, amongst the men of our community, in order to build and step up and do more. Right? There are many of us that are doing a lot of things, but I really want us to um, really harness our effort and see how we can collaborate, right? We do a lot of good things individually, but we can do so much more if we're together. And in that, coming together and having those conversations, one, I feel like or I should say, I think and believe that when we're children and we're at the playground, we just play with each other. We don't care, right? We just want to have fun. And then through the our domestication, through what our parents teach us, through our experiences in the world, then all of a sudden those separations are taught to us, and then we kind of assimilate to what those value sets are and the biases and all those other things that happen, which is unfortunate. Well, today I'm in a Zoom meeting with the Bainbridge Island Museum of Art, and to give them a shout out. And for the month of February, they have African American artists on exhibit, and I was asked by Akuye Vargas to, come out and live broadcast from there and highlight the art and talk with the artist. And so on the first Friday, we were out in the main gallery, and on the second Friday, we were put into the auditorium. And I felt some kind of way about that. So I was speaking with the Kuye the other day, and I said, "Hey, um, that was really kind of off-putting. I actually kind of felt like Rosa Parks, right? Being ushered to the back of the bus. We're literally in this auditorium. There's no one in there. All the art's on the other side, and we're not showing the art." And so I expressed that to the leadership at the Bainbridge Island Museum today, and they were very gracious, right? I mean, I didn't hit them over the head. I just told them how I felt, and they apologized, said, "Hey, this wasn't our intention. We're looking at how things work and just changing things, and we're very accommodating. We're going to go and check with the curator and see if it's acceptable for this to happen." They didn't know that this was happening so fast, and it's just the conversations and the authenticity of just saying, "Hey, a mistake was made. We're gonna look into it and try to do better, and there's no harm, no foul." And now I'm doing even more for the Bainbridge Island Museum, and so we're just cultivating that partnership. And so to me, that's part of what the social contract means to me, is coming to the table and giving each side grace, expressing when you feel like something has happened that didn't make you feel good, or something that was wrong, but then giving the other side the opportunity to do right by it, and not make an assumption that it was done with malicious intent, right? This is how I felt, but this may not be how you intended it, which it wasn't, right? And so that's a really prime example of if we can start moving in that direction, if more of us start swimming in that same direction, we will begin to rapidly fix a lot of the ills that kind of plague our country today. Nick,
I
your
couldn't
thoughts?
agree more.
Yeah, thank you, Marlon. And I completely understand from that perspective. I'm going to take this from the perspective of emergency manager, because that's a lot of what we're taught to try and do is this forward thinking and thinking outside of the box. So what comes to mind for me is these public-private partnerships. And so we all know preparedness is strength in numbers, as Mark's been speaking about. Well, how do we do that? It's really tough to get it done. It's easier said than done. So when we look at anything at state, local, tribal, or even territorial government, we all know that we can't, as one entity, do it alone. And so we must look to the other. So externally, these resources for assistance in preparing for and responding to and recovering from disasters. Um, so, what a public private partnership is by definition for emergency management would be any type of informal or formal cooperative arrangement between two or more organizations of a private industry and the public sector for the mutual benefit that is designed to ensure the life safety, economic security, and resilience of those jurisdictions or communities, if you will. So, not to go into too much doctrine, but we have a thing called the National Incident Management System. We all know 9/11 was a tragic thing, and George W. created, Homeland Security 2002. And so this was a response that should be incorporated at not only federally, but at the state and local level. And so it's certainly not limited, but it also includes like utilities, the industries, corporations, businesses, professionals, and trade associations. Well, under that, it's where sort of G2 would lie and what Mark's trying to do would lie. And so that needs to be brought in as well. And so when you try to reach out to these entities, um, we usually discover one of two things. Well, what are those? No real relationship exists between the jurisdiction and the organization, or there's an existing public-private partnership that is not being leveraged to its best ability. So there's some recommendations that we try to do, because that's the big question. How do we get this done? What's that look like? So what I've been taught is we promote why, what, and how to build those relationships and communicate and share information between the private sector, state, the local, tribal, and territorial government. So we would say, as the acronym SLTT, state, local, territorial, tribal. And then the public sector emergency management partners. The other thing you need to engage on those, we call them P3s, or the three Ps. You need to engage in resilience building, which Mark and Resco is about, and response oriented actions, or oriented, excuse me, actions based on community lifelines, supply chains, and the related economic activity. Um, Thirdly, building the resilience by integrating the private sector into the planning and the actions of those mitigations. So prior to something happening. So Cascadia, we need to do something now, not wait, because we'll be caught off guard. The fourth thing is we need to involve these local businesses in those operations, planning and responses. And lastly, it's integrating not only disaster recovery, because I'm still speaking from an emergency management standpoint, but planning with that economic development. And so that's the local community leaders, not just all political individuals, because they'll be there too, but we also need to incorporate those local community leaders.
Nick, can I ask you a question? I love what you're saying there. Is there a concerted effort for folks in the emergency management profession or sector that are actually doing that particular piece of the work, making those connections?
So it's
So
really
it's
hard
really
to
hard
speak
to
on
speak on
everyone as a
everyone as a
whole
whole
because the
because the
ideology and
ideology and the
methodologies are
methodologies
there in the
in the
doctrine.
doctrine.
Okay.
Now,
Now,
I can't
I
speak
can't
on
speak on
one
one
entity,
entity,
organization, or
organization, or
agency,
agency,
but I know
but
it's
I know
there.
it's
And
there.
that
And
is
that
what
is
you're
what
asking
you're
is how
asking
it's
is how it's
supposed to be
supposed to
being
be
done.
being done.
Um,
Um,
so there's
so
meetings
there's
that
meetings
take
that
place to
take
have
place to
this
have this
happen.
happen.
To which
To
degree
which
it's
degree it's
happening, I can't
happening, I
tell
can
you.
tell you.
But yes,
But
it's all
yes,
laid
it's
out
all
there,
laid
and
out there,
those
and
things
those
are
things are
supposed to be
supposed to be
happening. Are
happening.
we
Are
seeing
we
it? I
seeing
don't
it? I
think
don't
so.
think so.
Um,
Um,
Hence,
Hence,
Resco, what
Resco, what
G2's trying to
G2's trying
do.
to do.
There's people in
There's
the
people in the
community that are
community that are
bringing up these
bringing up these
operations,
operations, if you will,
and they have
and they
ties
have
to
ties
this.
to this.
So someone
So
like
someone like
myself who would
myself
be in a
who would be in a
position
position
to
to
reach out to you
reach out
guys
to you
and pull
guys
you
and
guys
pull you
in
guys
would be
in
the
would be
best
the
way
best
to make
way
that
to make
happen.
that happen.
So
So
I don't
I
think
don't
it's
think
happening
it's
to the
happening to the
degree it
degree
should
it
be
should
happening.
be happening.
So you've been nodding your head there, Mark, and you've been in this sector for for a very long time, and I kind of know what you're going to say here, but I think it's still important to get your thoughts. I love the fact that there's a doctrine that exists, and so there is this framework that apparently is there that I just learned for the first time. It's okay. How do we get the people to come together and start doing that work?
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. No, I'm
Wow.
gonna
No, I'm gonna
hold on.
hold on. Let me go.
All right. So while
Is that
Mark
better?
Is that better?
yep, you're good.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm hearing an
I'm
echo.
hearing an echo.
Yep, you're good on our side.
Okay, cool.
Okay, cool.
So it's my sound. All right.
All right.
So
So,
outreach to getting
outreach to
people
getting
involved
people involved
is going to
is
be
going to
it's always
be
tricky, especially in this world with COVID. People are talking to each other.
talking to each other.
But one of
But
the
one of the
with the private sector
private
issue
sector issue
and the
and
issue
the
with
issue with
getting people
getting
involved
people
in this
involved
day
in
and
this
age.
day and
Now,
age.
we've already
Now
talked
we've
about
already
the
talked about
contract being broken. One of the ways it's
one of the ways
broken,
it's
everybody's fighting
everybody's
to
fighting
survive.
to survive.
The economy
The
is
economy
not
is
doing well as everyone
well
is
as
saying
everyone's
it
saying
is. A lot of
it is.
people
A
are
lot of
becoming
people are
homeless.
becoming
A lot of
homeless.
people
A lot of people
are becoming
are
poor,
becoming poor,
trying to get their
trying to get
attention
their
when they're
attention
trying to
when
make
they're trying
rent,
to make rent,
worry about whether they're
worry
going to
about
have
whether they're going to
a
have
real issue.
real issue.
And getting their
And
attention,
their
getting them
attention,
involved in
getting them
something
involved
that
in
might
something
help
that
them in
might
the
help them in
future
the future
is going to
is
be.
going to be.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
I will see if
I
I can.
will see if I can.
Yeah, I was
Yeah, I was
noticing when I was
noticing when I was
talking,
talking,
I'm getting a lot of feedback, and it's hard to track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes a Wednesday feels like a Friday. I can't say it feels like a Monday because I love Mondays. So yeah, we're getting reports that both of your mics are kind of having an echo. On my side, it's fine. So it could be your volume just kind of kicking back. So if your speakers are a little too loud, it'll create a feedback loop. So go ahead and say something to me, Nick.
I'm going to
I'm going to
try to take these
take
off.
these off.
Yeah, go ahead. Can you still hear?
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Is that better?
Is that better?
You sound fine to me. The issue is more on Mark's side. But while we're waiting on Mark to come back, one question that I didn't ask you is, you did start off on the criminal justice pathway. What made you change to emergency management?
Well, the simple
The
answer
simple
is
answer is
Olympic Community College no
College
longer
no longer
offered
offered
that
that
option.
option.
Um,
Um,
the state of society,
society,
the way the world was, I didn't want to
want
be
to be
seen as the
seen
bad
as the
guy.
bad guy.
Because we were talking earlier,
earlier,
everyone has their judgments, and nobody knows the other side, the inside. So it can be tough to get past that. My cousin was top in Albany, Oregon, for 28 years. He was detective for a few years, and him and I had some conversations about things. So really, initially that Olympic College didn't offer that. I didn't want to make a trip or travel. I know they offered an online option, but Olympic College felt to me, which I spent time there, and I want to leave that. And so I think maybe it's a blessing in disguise. And I think a lot of people take that route. They, hey, I just want to be a cop. Hey, I just want to be a firefighter. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just one day woke up and decided I wanted to do something else.
Why that? Because I mean, you could have. There's a whole range of programs at OC. So I mean, it's a full gambit. You could have went into nursing or, film.
Yeah. And I'm a very interesting person because, I not only love the liberal arts, but I also have this logical, systematic, and when I say that, in a negative way, systems thinking, there's a reason for scientific training, and always been enthralled with weather and natural disasters, averages, hurricanes, volcanoes. And I always thought to myself, when those things happen, that impacts a community, and who takes care of that. So we always the first responder. And so I thought, because I seen it one time, and I've been in a couple earthquakes. And so I thought to myself, who's helping the firefighters if something happens and so I see a picture of basically a destroyed fire station and destroyed police station. And so I said, who helps those people? Who helps get the community, up and running? And so then I started learning about continuity of operation, what business does protect itself when this happens. And then they fell into well, there's called an emergency operations that gets activated. And then all these agencies and organizations have plans get activated, put into play, allow the community to be helped serve while keeping it running. And so that's kind of how that whole, and it was really interesting to me because I was like, wow, I get to help people, but also learn about disasters and why they're happening, and maybe they could have been prevented. So it was really more of a, if you can kind of see where I'm going now, as a police officer, good cops help people, firefighters help people, they aid people. They not just put out fires, or save cats from trees, if you will. There's other things that they do, and they make this relationship in the community with people, and that's a reflection of who they are. And so I just said, hey, I get to look at disasters, because that's fascinating. The devastation that comes out of them is not good, so that's not what gets me excited. And so I was like, I can help people look at weather and disasters and work to keep a community afloat and get aid and resource into that community. So that's really how it was, like an amalgam of everything for me. And I was like, wow, this is where I really would like to be. And then even within that, it's so vast to where you would fall off of that tree and where you could be and play your part. So that's really what wrapped it up and sold it for me, was it was sort of an amalgam of everything that I liked and I could still do, maybe just without a badge and in the law, so to speak.
Gotcha. Mark, what we were talking about is what made Nick go down that pathway, and then turning from 29 to 30 and changing into that, when there was a range of direction that he could have gone into with the way that his mind works. What's interesting is there's so many Americans that love natural disaster movies and television shows like Jericho. That. Do you say horror movies?
Horror movies. I just don't get it. I just don't.
Well, the thing is that we really like it, right? Like Jericho is one that I really enjoyed. Even The Walking Dead, right? and thinking about that, it's like, okay, so you're watching
And
and
now we
you're
have COVID.
or COVID,
No, I'm
but
just thinking about The Walking Dead and COVID. Yeah,
but there's a part that we have to play as an individual, right?
yeah.
And you see how people either thrive or suffer, based on their preparedness, right? And so you're gonna have to do your part on that. But let's get back to you, Mark, because we missed you there for a minute. So
Let
why
me
don't you pick up where you left off?
let me address a little bit about what you were talking about before. I can simply say why I do this. And she's 24, and her name is Kira, and she's my daughter. And if science is to be followed, her life is going to continue to get worse. The environment she lives in is going to continue to get worse over the next 50 years. And if the even moderate projections of climate change are to be understood, her life is never going to be good. So
Wow.
the fallacy that my mom used to say to me, that you have it better than we had it, you and your kids will have it better than we have it, that's just a lie. They don't have it better. They will never have it better. Entire generations of people know that it's not going to be better. So why do I do this? That. How do I wake people up? God, I wish you guys could tell me, because I've been struggling with that one for 5 years. I'm learning a little bit more every day about how to do outreach, how to get people's attention. Um, but we are so far away from having relationships, knowing our neighbors, trusting people to depend on them, and being trustworthy ourselves, that we have an atmosphere of distrust that permeates every aspect of our social contract. And it goes up, and not to knock emergency management um, or government in any way, but it's government's job to keep things safe, not to make changes. And Nick is right. It needs to be private public partnerships to make that happen, because the private partnership brings the drive to change to the table. But in this case, I think it needs to be a grassroots network of people, because no public private partnership is broad enough or has enough interest, invested interest, to drive that kind of change in government. So that's why people have to get together. We have to start sandtabling. We have to start discussing. We have to look at what can come, and overcome the, well, that's tomorrow. That's next week. That may not happen for 50 years. Yeah, but it might happen tomorrow. Climate change is happening every day. Something is changing every day. And let me just give one little piece.
Sure.
Kitsap County is 100% dependent on aquifers for water. We have 80 water districts, 80 plus water districts in Kitsap County, which is ridiculous. And all of them manage one little piece of it, but who owns the entire picture of the water? That keeps a lot of people I know in the water business and the water organizations up at night, thinking about, what is our water table really doing? We do have 4 reservoirs, but it is not enough, nor are they regionally spaced enough to support the almost 300,000 people we have on Kitsap Peninsula. So there's a lot of things that need to happen, and people need to become aware that what we think is in the future is in fact happening now.
Well, I'll tell you, the glass half full for me is, meeting you last year and getting more knowledge, right? Because I had some ideas and some concerns. But Rob was on a few weeks ago and was talking about how folks are just so busy living their daily lives. Oh, and dealing with a pandemic and not having a livable wage and on and on and on. And then you're saying, hey, you know what? You need to understand this and you need to prepare and educate yourself and uh, create community and facilitate change. And this is a stark example of how you can do that, right? So you and I, met through a third or fourth party, and you came onto the podcast, and now we're doing this work, and Nick jumps in and and is bringing his experiences to bear, and this is how it is. And so it's not as fast as we want it to be, and these things should have happened 50, 60 years ago, but we are making the progress now, right? And that's why my quote, and we can talk about quotes another day, is power is taken, it's not given. It is taking responsibility and accountability to do your part, whatever that is. And your part is valuable, and it doesn't matter how small you think it is or how insignificant it is. It's a big deal, right? I'm not a firefighter, I'm not an emergency management person, but I can
You're a
create a
communicator.
platform to give voice, right? And so we all need that, and that's really the whole thing about the puzzle pieces, which I really love that concept of it, because there is a space for everyone, right?
By the way,
uh,
you see the picture in the background
oh
with
yeah,
the
yeah.
puzzle pieces that need to be filled in.
Uh-huh. I love it. I love it. Nick, jump in there. What's your thoughts there based on what we were just kind of talking about?
Well, and so there's all these things that absolutely, with not just water. And so typically, if we were to go through a hypothetical scenario of what were to happen, whoever's prepared on an individual level, uh, and how long that they're isolated for, that preparedness that they started developing for themselves prior to an emergency, is going to keep them, is their survivability rate until help can arrive. So there's always, you can't plan for everything. You can try, but you're not exactly going to be sure what you lack until you know that that happens. So water is a big one. I will agree with Mark there. Um, there was some things I was going to bring up that the county has done and is looking at. For instance, infrastructure is a big one. We won't be able to go to the supermarket potentially. So these partnerships and the aid, when things are outside of the scope for the local or even the state, we obviously reach out to the federal government for this aid, and that's where we get these other resources in. Well, there all are these supply chains, which I will agree with Mark, that are concerning, and we need to make sure that these interagency coordinations are happening, and not happening as this disaster is being gone through, as we're experiencing it. And in order for this to happen, we have to make sure these communications are going on. Because yeah, there might be an issue with water. There might not just be water. It might be power as well. We know that we're going to be isolated from potentially transportation. There will be no picking up the phone and dialing for 911 because they're going to be so overloaded, that it is just you potentially, and this is hypothetical on a very grand scale, and even it could be on a middle magnitude quake. It just depends on where it hits. We can't predict that sort of thing. Speaking on an earthquake, so yeah, it's important to make sure that these interagency coordinations, these resources are there through the supply chain, and that's with power, with water, with the grocery stores. um, Everyone's going to have an issue, and the better prepared we are, talk like we're doing now, talking, getting the community together, our survivability rate increases. um, so yeah, that's a very big question, and holding the people that are in charge of making these choices, and making sure that they have things in place, is a very good way to determine and grade where we would be at with that. Because yes, there's going to be a slew of problems that everyone's dealing with, not just water, but that is a major one. And so, we don't know if this fire department has water and what they're doing with it, and are they just serving a 10-mile radius. We know the grocery store is going to have water, but how long is that going to last, and what's going to happen with that? Because we've seen it with looting. A lot of law goes out the window, and we're forced to be in a constraint with what we have, and then standing in these lines. The gas stations are going to be closed because of
Well,
potential
actually, I
hazard.
want to. I'd like to address that really quickly.
Go ahead, Mark.
Looting is one of the big concerns that I have, and one of the reasons that we've developed the community focused project that we have is because peer pressure within communities will cut down on looting. And Nick, when you and I were talking last night, I said, well, if a police officer is stuck in his home or stuck in his neighborhood because he can't go to the station because of an earthquake or disaster and roads are impassable, go to the local supermarket and have preset arrangements with the people who work at the market with the local community to come and secure the food. And when somebody comes to loot it and they're looking at their neighbor, what do you think the chances of being able to de-escalate are? Much greater, I would think, than if you weren't looking at your neighbor who was saying, "Come on, you will get food. That's what we're doing here. We're setting it up to make sure you and your family get fed. Don't worry about it." And if you need the large screen TV, what the hell are you going to do with it with no power?
Well, one thing that I think is really critical about the conversation right now is I think folks are looking at it many times as, hey, you know what, we're overdue for this big earthquake, but it could happen, right? It's a possibility, and so they don't really. It's not a priority. It's not at the forefront, but I don't think they realize how fast things go down and the situation deteriorates, right? And if looting does happen, it happens and then everything is gone. So those resources, it's done, right? So then what are you going to do after that? And the other thing that I wanted to say was, we don't need a massive earthquake to find ourselves in need, in dire
Nope.
need. The snowstorm, all of a sudden, people don't have mobility to get around and get what they need, especially when they get trapped. Especially thinking about in Virginia when they had their storm, and that's something that they're used to. So, which is pretty terrifying that they were caught unaware or unprepared. They were aware. At Texas, right? They've had snow 2 years in a row, which is
Tornadoes.
tornadoes, things that we don't typically have. Our supply chain issues that we still have currently that are going on, the inflation for prices on meat and everything else, fuel. So all these things exist right now, but it's kind of like the crabs in a pot, right? Uh, is allegedly if you bring it to a boil slowly, they won't scream and hop out, right? And that's how I feel that we are in a lot of ways, right? It's just this slow boil, and we watch these things happen. It's like, okay, well, these shelves were empty. I went in, it's probably been about a month now, but it was in January, and I'm in Safeway on Callow, and I took video of the freezer section just bare. It looked like they were emptying out the freezers to clean them out, and there wasn't anything really going on. I mean, the pandemic numbers were a little bit high, the COVID numbers were a little high, but it was strange. So I went in the next day just to see, hey, was this, were they cleaning it? Were they just waiting on a truck that came in later, whatever the case may be? And it was a few days in a row that this was like that. It's like, okay, if you're not ready, this is going to be a huge issue. And if you don't have mobility or accessibility, that's also going to be an issue, because many of us may be living check to check, or we're using government assistance to help us to get through, which oftentimes isn't enough. And so when we get caught under, we have just a few days, and now we've got a problem. And now, how do you get there if you have issues with transportation and accessibility, your own mobility? What happens when there's a run on these things like there was on toilet paper, and now you can't get your proteins and your meats and the other things you need, or your medications? It was one of the things that Nick and I were talking about the other day. If you can't get your meds, that that's going to be a hard way for folks that need their heart medicine or their
And
diabetic
we don't
medicine.
stockpile. We don't
Yeah.
stockpile pharmaceuticals. They are just in time. And so people with heart conditions, people with diabetes are SOL,
Mm.
however you want to
Hmm.
use those acronyms. Um, we have been looking into the Food for All project and trying to initiate some discussions with naturopaths and folks to find herbal alternatives that we could grow here in the county so that we have a backlog of possible ways to mitigate heart conditions, at least until we can get medical supplies. But that could be up to 4 months before we start getting drops and getting them where they need to be. And that's best case scenario.
No, that's terrifying. I currently I'm dealing with high blood pressure, and they're trying to work that out. But when it is extremely high, uh, it doesn't feel great, and it feels like you can have a stroke or a heart attack. And if you're experiencing that and you're in a time of crisis and there's no way to get those medicines, that is a true concern. And, Nick and I were talking about how I do, and I'm not a medical professional, so this is not medical advice, but there are days where I skip my medicine so that I can start to slowly build a stockpile of meds in case I get cut off or I don't have access. And so that's something that is effective for me to do. So I have about 90 days of my blood pressure medicine. And although they say medicine expires, it may not work at the same level of efficacy, but it will still work. So for me, that's really important. I need to be cognizant of that.
So you may want to talk to your doctor about getting extras and starting to cycle through them and keep some in the go bag.
Ooh, yeah, the go bag. You're absolutely right about that.
Oh, speaking of go bags, we should talk about that.
Yeah.
Marwan and I are going shopping, and we're going to put together a go bag for Marwan. Now, that's interesting in and of itself because we've got some cool things and some things that we've taught Marwan about, like Leatherman tools and Sawyer water filters and such. But that's not the only story. Resilient Ecosystems Patreon page has got a new post on it where when we get 500 subscribers at $20 a piece for 6 months, we will be giving away 10 of these go bags that'll be worth somewhere between $250 and $300. And we'll have everything a person needs to survive for days, uh, including water filters, emergency shelter, and everything that you can take with you or put in your car.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
I'm
And
super excited about that. Actually, I had a go bag, um, and then with all the stuff with G2, I'm constantly, putting things in and out of my car. And the biggest reminder was the fact that people were dying during that snowstorm in Virginia because it took so many hours for them to be able to clear the roads and get that moving. And I can only imagine, right? We were running around, you got a quarter of a tank of gas, you're gonna hop on the freeway and hop off, and now you need that fuel to stay warm. It was just a really, really horrible situation that those folks were going through. And so having a blanket and water and some other things in there, some snacks. I'm thinking about putting some not tasty snacks in there, so I'm not tempted to eat them because they're in the car.
well,
Uh,
no, go ahead and eat them, but make sure you replace them.
Well, no, but that's the problem. I would constantly be replacing them because they're so tasty. So I'm gonna put some things that aren't so tasty in there, just so I'm not tempted to eat them up.
Yeah. So one of the things about food in the go bag is we're going to be choosing food that is as allergen free as possible. There won't be anything in it with peanuts, which is kind of the go to for a lot of emergency management people. We will be going for something like a Larabar or the I want to say Cliff bars because that's not what I'm thinking of. The Kind bars and things like that, which may have nuts in them, but not peanuts, which have the higher allergens. And we will be trying to find things that are high caloric and are easy to carry with you. Probably not going to have MREs in them because it's really high caloric intake, but prepping it, stopping. This is basically to keep you alive, not to for a few days, not for a week or 2 weeks.
Well, Rice Krispie treats are super light, so I should be able to, really stock up on those. True.
Yeah, nutritional density is another thing we want to talk about.
Yeah. So the other thing I'd like to add to that too, what's important is implementing, like, let's say something that has a survey link attached to it. So I'm talking about brochures or some guide that has information on what you can do, contact information, out of state contact information. So I think something like that, maybe laminated, some sort of deal that you would see handed out from the fire department with community emergency numbers, and then you have whoever your contacts would be, and it's something that you see like on your fridge. Something should be built in and put in there like that. And the state Washington Emergency Military Management Division has plenty of stuff, and also so does Kitsap County Department of Emergency Management. And I can share a few things with that I'll put in the link there. But yeah, this document here Marwan's pulling up is the most recent and updated version. It's a hefty document, as you can see, and it can be daunting, but there's a table of contents that you would look at, and it specifies sort of specific hazards to our county that are based off of a risk rating. And within those risk ratings, it shows, for infrastructure, people, if it's a low, high, medium, so on to speak. But this really can, if someone's concerned and wants to know really what the county is doing to protect us and the community and its infrastructure, it will be in here. We have probability of future events here with landslides and erosion mitigation strategies, earthquake things that list histories, extents, vulnerability summaries, and it goes on and on and on, honestly. And it can be, like I said, daunting, but if you want to know what the county is doing, it's in here, from planning to what individuals are involved on the, I don't want to call it a board, who in the planning process. So
all right, so I put that link in the chat. I haven't seen this document, so I love this. I will be reviewing this information here. I'm interested to see, a little bit more on what their plan is if we have a tsunami and an earthquake. Tsunamis are usually followed by earthquakes, so those things are important. And then we'll probably have some flooding, and I'm glad to see that this exists and that it's accessible. So I do appreciate you sharing that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has all the lead agency stakeholders and steering committee participation is the word I was looking for. I haven't spoke on that stuff in quite a while. So yeah, and it has, like I said, for Port Orchard, Paulsville, Silverdale, Jefferson County, our sister jurisdictions, if you will. Also, it talks about the last time, I believe it was like at the Kitsap County Fair and Stampede, where they did a Google survey, and it had a link for that. So it's they definitely are aware of things and overall risks of people, damages, economy, and the environment. So it's all in there. The thing that I'm concerned on is, that's the big one, is how it all works, this interagency coordination when this stuff happens. So, and then the training behind it, those plans, goals, and objectives of what that will look like. And I believe they're planning another great shakeout exercise June 13th through the 17th. Don't quote me on that, but that'll take place, in multiple areas, Bremerton Airport. I can't remember the other locations that they do those things at, but that's in there, and you can go to their site and see what they're doing.
Yeah, this is a pretty robust document here, and we do need to know what they're doing and have a plan.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all public disclosure off of Kitsap County Department of Emergency Management's website.
Yep. And I just added the link from the American Society of Civil Engineers. It's their report card for our infrastructure. And as you mentioned, the infrastructure is one of the scariest things. Don't read the report card if you don't have a strong stomach.
I see a C- here.
Yeah, that's the country. And it breaks it down in all forms of, it's really comprehensive what they do. And you can search by state, you can search by area, and they basically, the entire country runs at a C-. And if for all of us who remember school, C- isn't a great grade to have.
Well, Marwan told me C's get degrees. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I hate that phrase. I hate that.
I know. I know.
What
No,
do you
I know,
call a
especially.
medical, yeah, what do you call a medical school student with C average?
What's
I
that?
don't know.
No.
A doctor?
Yeah, he graduated.
Well, that's not who I want performing my heart surgery.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's definitely not at the Mayo Clinic. I'll tell you that.
yeah.
So we have a C for Washington as of 2019. Uh, yeah, I would like to see a B or B plus. So this is definitely concerning. Do you know what some of the factors are there, Mark?
They're looking at water. They're looking at roadways. They're looking at power infrastructure. It is my understanding, again, don't hold me on this because I haven't looked in a while, but most of our power comes through Gorst from from Mason County and across the
Mhm.
Tacoma Narrows Bridge, which are two extraordinarily vulnerable sites. So if either of those sites are damaged or have problems, we lose our power. And FEMA has said that during a Cascadia type event, and this is going to the extreme of the Cascadia type event, Kitsap County can be without power for up to a year. Now, I was in an emergency management meeting a few years ago, and I asked PSC about that, and they said, "Oh, no more than 4 to 6 months."
I'm going to
So,
sign up for the email updates.
yep, for almost
I'll
300,000 people, 4 to 6 months without power is devastating. So, yes, infrastructure, and one of the things I talk about a lot, and Marwan and I talk about a lot, are the way dots connect. I mean, without water, you don't grow food. Without roadways, you don't import food.
right.
Without power and you don't have wastewater treatment because the pumps have to work. So all I got to say is it could be a really shitty situation if
And
there's a major disaster.
the question that I was asking you were what were the factors, and you see aviation, bridges, dams, drinking water, energy, hazardous waste, many of the things that we're talking about, right? The
Mm-hmm.
inlet waterways, rail,
Roads.
roads, solid waste, stormwater, and wastewater. So this is how they are coming to their conclusion of a C grade. So there's a lot of information here. And again, your puzzle piece, there's a lot of different ways that we can bring our pieces to bear. And so this is kind of the knowledge and education piece, gaining an understanding and learning what you need to do. It may sound kind of selfish, but in helping yourself and your family to prepare, that means that the focus can go on some other folks that don't have the resources or the knowledge or the wherewithal to prepare, right? So you're not straining the grid, and then you can also lend a helping hand. I'm definitely really looking forward to doing our community potluck in my neighborhood come this spring. So it's like I can't wait for it to get a little bit warmer and come and do a meet and greet with the neighbors and start to build those relationships and then show that to all of you so that you can see us modeling what we're saying needs to happen and just
It,
continuing to do that.
it is really fine and dandy to say that, to come in and present, to say, this is, you map your neighborhood and then walk away. What
Mhm.
neighborhoods need are people that have gone through the process, that can help facilitate the process and have those discussions, can facilitate the initial conversations that will let them build on that. Also, I kind of wanted to tease something here that we're going to be talking about more as April timeframe comes in. Is we are in the planning phases for a community fest, and after my conversations with Nick last night, I've made some notes about things we want to modify. We were talking about town hall, but I think in the center of the town hall, we should have maps of Kitsap County and LiDAR maps, and bring people in and just have that conversation with them about, this is what the county looks like, this is what's going on, and kind of give that shock and awe feeling about, in any situation, having a resilient neighborhood will help you survive, and building the foundation of resilience helps us all thrive. We create jobs, we have a healthier environment. There's no downside to building resilience, but we need people to wake up and connect.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got One more resource, Nick. You want to tell us what this resource is that you just put there in the chat?
Yeah, no problem. So let's see. I posted a couple here. So I'll start with the Great Shakeout one. So this would be our Department of our State Emergency Management Division. So on that link, this was specifically about the Great Shakeout. So this is all good information that you can learn about earthquakes and tsunami hazards. EMD also has Emergency Management Division for our state, also has a YouTube channel called EMD Prepare, where you can go and learn more about preparedness and disaster ready Washington. And one second here. So it just explains about what is shakeout, and how taking action and be a shakeout champion is sort of the phrase they're using. And you can register and participate in these drills, playing an audio broadcast during your drill. It's signing up for emergency alerts through NOAA, the weather radio. This is really beneficial for individuals on the coast. We will see some tsunami inundation, I believe, but there's brochures, postcards. It's just a really great. There's even activities for kids to get the family involved. Further down there, yeah, if you go a little further down, it explains what I just kind of was talking about. And yeah, so you can access the DNR geological hazard map. You can also see what it would look like if you play around with it a little bit. I sent the link to Mark. You could play around with it a little bit and see what sort of our hazards would look like in a modeling scenario, based off of the big 9.0 quake, or something smaller. There's evacuation maps, there's route maps. And then, so I also shared a second link. So that would be, where did that go here? I think that would be the public.
One of the things I'd like to see happen in neighborhoods and communities is do an evacuation walk. When I lived in Port Orchard, I went down to the marina and looked around. There are two signs there that were given by emergency management. And one of them is behind a bench over by the children's play area. The other one is between the bathrooms. And they say that this is a tsunami zone, and they talk about the tsunami, a basic tsunami sign. But there's nothing pointing to the evacuation routes. Nothing saying go uphill now. And I think that it needs to, again, it's the power of numbers. We train people in communities to look at this. They help other people learn. And then suddenly people know how to get out of a tsunami zone. And my concern is that if we depend on emergency management, we depend on the county and their 4 people and the emergency responders that we know, there aren't enough of them to help enough people in a time of a disaster. So people have to learn how to help themselves. It's just simple mathematics.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why I was saying, folks have to start educating themselves and start to prepare. Nick, as we're running out of time here, we're actually 4 minutes over. Will you tell us quickly about that last link?
Yeah, so that last link, I don't know if you wanted to pull it up real quick. It's the mil.wa.gov publications. Okay. And so to speak on Mark's point, this is really to get 2 weeks ready. It has a backpack brochure. This was sort of what I was speaking on, would be a great addition to throw into your go bag that you guys are trying to create. And then so it has an all hazards basic brochure, and there's posters, and it talks about animals and pets. And so if you scroll down there, you can see that they have covering English, Chinese, Korean, Russian, Spanish, Tagalog, Vietnamese, these non-English speaking populations. And so earthquake and tsunami. So there's really a lot of good information. So I really think a great start with doing this is also getting people to access this information and knowing where it is. And it's great because it's all right here for people to learn. And there's even for natural disasters, learning about natural disasters with word game and puzzles, and it's for grades 3 through 6 or K through 2 for even the younger kids, because that's a big one. Is the underserved populations, the elderly, and the kids. A lot of kids get separated from their families because we don't know when this is going to happen. Everyone's going to be at work, mom and dad at work, maybe the older sibling at home. He just came home from school. As I remember with the 2018 Port Orchard tornado that touched down very briefly, that could have been very, very bad. I was leaving OC and coming here, and my kid was still at school, and my girlfriend was at work. And so, the family, all of us were in different places all at once. So that can be a real nightmare for a parent and a child to get back to each other. So it's just good to get people aware of where this information's at. And so that's why I was more than happy to share that. So that's what this is. Information, knowledge is power. So I'd like to share it.
And
Yeah,
they are
no, I
powerful
appreciate
resources.
that.
I've been through most of those, and they are extremely powerful resources. And to your point earlier, Nick, about having emergency numbers and such, if you put together a page for that, Marwan and I will put it up on the web, on our web pages
Okay,
as
cool,
part of our
cool.
information. So if you put something together, I'll put it up and make sure that
Okay.
people have access to it, and then we'll start printing them out and handing them out at our public events.
All right. Excellent.
Yeah, Nick, I really appreciate your willingness to do that, because I think that's one of the another concern or another issue on why people don't engage, because there's so many different places to go, right? You gave us 5 websites at least that are chock full of all this information, and it's like, well, I don't know where to look, and then when I get here, it's a 200-page document. I don't even know how to begin to decipher this. What do I need from this? Which I prioritize? And so having that kind of that hub, that one stop, and having knowledgeable people on hand to talk people through it and have these discussions is huge. So I definitely really appreciate that. Um, Definitely the horn. I do appreciate you both. We did go a little over today, but this was excellent. Definitely excellent. I do want to encourage everyone, please, to go to www.reseco.org and check out the social contract, uh, and, and give it a quick read. It's short, this long. And what does it mean to you? What's your input and your feedback? Bring your puzzle piece in regards to the social contract. We need you, and you need us, and we need to be together. And this is how we do it, right? Bring ideas, bring yourself. We appreciate you. Mark, I'm going to give you the final word. Nick, again, we appreciate you. I hope that you will be willing to come and join us from time to time. I enjoy listening to your expertise. I'm a nerd, so when you start
Hey,
talking that education stuff, that gets
yes.
me all pumped up.
Oh yeah, me too. I love it. I appreciate it. And thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure, I will be on here again in the future talking about this, because I know there was a couple of things Mark and I did want to talk about we didn't get to talk about, but that's okay because we had a great conversation. So thank you. And
Yeah,
everyone have
if
a great day.
you're willing to come back, yeah, we'll have you back as soon as you're available. Because this
And
is what it looks like. This is the work. This really is
Yeah.
the work.
yep.
Mark,
And
take us out.
the final statement, it's something you hear a lot, and I want everybody to just take a moment, take a deep breath, and think about it. We are better together.
Well, I need to get a mic drop for that. I don't have one. So, for Nick, Mark, I am Marwan. This is the Conduit. We will see you next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Thank you for joining us, everyone. All right. Have a good one.